everyone, it's Crystal and my beautiful baby girl Elise. I'm going to do a little recap of my labor and delivery story. Most of you guys kind of have the cliff notes from updating on Facebook because I did that quite a bit, so you guys kind of know what went down, but I'll give a little bit more details. So let's see, I'll get my notes. So on Wednesday, April 13th, I had my 39-week OB appointment, and at that appointment I was 2 centimeters dilated and 90% effaced, and I was, the doctor did a membrane sweep, and then that afternoon I went to my spin class, my cycling class, as usual, but nothing happened, no increased contractions. I was a little crampy right after the sweep, but that's about it. And then on Thursday, I had an acupuncture appointment, and that was at 1:30, I think. And I got home at around 3:30, and was just doing crafty stuff, I think. And I was walking down the stairs at 4:30, and I felt a trickle. And I thought, oh, it's probably just whatever, discharge or something. Then I walked into the office, and I felt a more trickle. And sure enough, it was my water that broke. So I knew it was, go time-ish. But there was no contractions, not even Braxton Hicks, nothing. So I decided to wait at home for a while because I knew that if we just packed our stuff and went right to the hospital, that they would start me on Pitocin, because the hospitals aren't very patient with that type of thing a lot of times. So I tried to do things to start getting contractions going, just bouncing on the ball and walking up and down the stairs more, and so that started working, but not for 4 hours later probably is when I started getting some good contractions, the ones that I knew were real. And the one annoying thing with your water, it's continually just slowly gushing out, and it's very annoying kind of being at home and trying to not get stuff everywhere. Hi, sweetie. Oh no, don't be fussy. Sorry. So I continued to wait and have them get stronger, started timing them. They were starting to come between every 5 and 8 minutes apart. Ryan and I watched a movie, and towards the end of the movie I started getting pretty uncomfortable, and I decided that before I was in a lot of pain, we should probably go get checked in so that I didn't have to be sitting and waiting and triage forever and being in a lot of pain. And so we checked into triage at our hospital at about 10:30 p.m. and there's a bunch of questions you have to answer, and they wanted to make sure that it was my water, but he didn't even have to do a swab because I was like, yeah, look at this. And so that's what happened then. I think it was almost midnight by the time I was actually in our room, and contractions were getting really strong, but they just weren't super close together. They were still at that 5 to 7 time frame, and the first doctor that came in just to introduce himself was like, yeah, well, if you don't start getting those contractions closer together, we're probably going to start Pitocin. I was like, oh, great. But I started kind of, making my wishes known, going, I really want to avoid Pitocin if I can, you know, and so they started giving me like kind of checkpoints, like, okay, if by, you know, in 2 hours, if you've dilated more and you're obviously progression, then you're fine to stay, you know, natural as you are, or if you haven't progressed, you know, we would really suggest going on Pitocin. So I said, okay, well, we'll see. So at 2:30 a.m. I was 4 centimeters dilated and 100% effaced. So I was progressing, not super fast, but I was progressing. So then they came in again and said, okay, well, we'll give you another 2 hours. We'll see how, you know, if you're continuing to progress, then that's good. But if not, then we'll really want to start Pitocin. So at 4-ish a.m., I was in some just excruciating pain as far as the contractions go. They still weren't super close together, but I started just kind of, I could tell my body was having a hard time dealing with them. Mentally, I was fine, and I was able to do my breathing techniques, and I wasn't tense as far as I was like not holding on to anything. I was really, you know, breathing through them and doing a good job there, but I could tell that my body was just not reacting well, that something was kind of weird, because I started, you know, throwing up, and I was just, yeah, you know, hot sweats and all the, you know, and I mean, that's normal-ish, but I knew that it was different than before, and sure, then I oftentimes during the contractions, which I wouldn't have ever said I had back labor, but during some of the contractions, I was definitely asking Ryan to, you know, push as hard as he could on my back and squeeze my hips together, and so I think that was an indicator of things to come. So at 4:30, they checked me, and I hadn't progressed any. And I knew that they wanted to start Pitocin, and I knew that with the contractions, as painful as they were, and how long I had, you know, already been in labor, how tired I already was, that I wasn't going to tolerate the Pitocin very well. So I knew that we kind of needed to start Pitocin because how much time had lapsed and the risk for infection at that time when they checked me and I hadn't progressed. They also checked my temperature, and I did have a slight temperature, and I started getting worried because I really remember Carla, the Bubblish's story, and she ended up getting an infection and became delirious, and then poor little Hannah had to go to the NICU, and I really wanted to avoid that, and had to have a C-section, and I wanted to avoid that as well. So I said, you know what, I have to just, you know, I have to go with the Pitocin, and in order to go with the Pitocin, I knew I needed the epidural, and I, you know, really wanted to do a natural birth, but I went into this with no plan. I was really fortunate to be able to see everybody's birth stories before mine and just realize that you can plan as much as you want, but it doesn't always, you know, go that way. And if I was having a home birth, it probably would have been different. You can have your water broke for a really long time at home with a very little risk of infection. No one's checking you, you're in your own environment, it's not in a hospital, but because I was having a hospital birth and they were checking me all the time, I knew that I could get an infection. So at 4:30, I said, yeah, please go ahead and do the Pitocin, but I'm going to have the epidural. And it's funny, mentally, the shift that happened then. Once I knew that I was going to get the epidural and get some pain relief, I like wanted it now. It was funny. Before, mentally I was fine. I was in a lot of pain, but I was strong, but after that I was like, get that guy in here now. But and sitting through those contractions on the bed between getting the epidural was awful. It was like the absolute worst position I wanted to be in. But anyway, so I had the epidural, and I was instantly in so much better spirits just because I was able to relax and get a little bit of a kind of a cat nap for about 20-30 minutes probably. But then they came back in to check me, and sure enough, just from relaxing, I dilated from a 4 to 8 in like 25 minutes, 30 minutes tops, because they were checking me again to see, how much Pitocin and stuff to give me. And yeah, so then they're like, oh, you don't need Pitocin. Then I'm like, oh, great. I kind of got the epidural without needing it. But at that point, it was, kind of heaven. It really was. And I was surprised to see that I could still feel my feet, and I guess they just didn't dose it super high. I could still feel my feet. I could move my legs. I could lift my legs up and down, and so that's because I just really didn't want to feel completely disconnected, and I wasn't. So that was good. At 8 a.m. I think, they checked me again, and I was complete. And the nurse, I think because of how long my water had been broke already, really wanted me to start pushing, even though I didn't feel any pressure or anything like that. So I started pushing, but she was like, oh yeah, you're not moving the baby, you're not being effective. And right away, she was a great nurse, but she kept on making me feel like I wasn't doing something right. And I just kind of knew that I thought I would be a good pusher because I'm just very strong and fit. And anyway, so that was frustrating. But she was like, so well, we can take some time and let you labor down. And so that's what I did. I got into a few different positions, hands and knees and things, to try to get her to drop lower. And so that was, I think they gave me an hour or two. So then I started, actively pushing, and I started, it was kind of odd, then being, fairly numb and not feeling the contractions, pushing, but I thought I was getting the hang of it. They kept on saying, oh yeah, you're just really not pushing the baby, and they're moving the baby. And one time I'd get a good push in, and another time they're like, oh, do that again, and I'm like, I don't know what I just did. And so that was a little difficult. But then I started getting this major pain in my pelvis and hip, and the epidural did nothing for it. Nothing. And so I kept on asking, is the baby in the right position? And the nurse kept on saying, yeah. And her heart rate was fine, and they just said, yeah, we just need you to get in these good pushes and move her down. And so I said, okay, and I'm still pushing, and I'm making a little bit of progress, but very slowly. And in the meantime, my hip and pelvis is just killing me even more. I kept on wanting, I asked several times, and I was able to, if I could push on my side, resting on my left side, because if I had that pressure of my whole body laying on that left side, the hip and pelvis felt a lot better. So I did that. And then, but still, very slow progress. So one of the doctors came in and was like, oh, I don't think she's feeling the contractions enough. You know, I want you to, basically, they turned off like the automatic drip for the epidural and just did it so that I had to push a button. And so they let it wear down to kind of like a bare minimum. And that started feeling good, especially with the hip thing that already hurt. So we kept on pushing and pushing, and finally the doctor's like, oh, I think she is a little crooked, and but she's either, you know, kind of facing up this way or down this way. I think it's down. And so anyway, so they weren't too concerned, but I did. I said, well, I'm going to get up on my, you know, hands and knees and try to help things out. I even, you can tell how wore off the epidural was, because I was able to squat on the bed using a squat bar. So I had full, you know, movement and stability in my legs. So then I continued to push, and I'm finally getting more effective pushes, but it was very hard to get. It was just so slow. And but finally, we got to a point where, you know, she started crowning, and sure enough, as I was pushing her out, you know, they were telling me to look down, and we saw a nose pop out. And then I knew she was sunny side up, and that's why it was so painful on my hip and pelvis, and that's why everything was taking so long. So from 8 a.m. till 2:15 p.m. is how long I pushed, basically. There was some inactive time, so I would have said 4 hours of solid hard pushing, which was tough, but the epidural made it a lot easier, and I honestly don't think I would have had the energy dealing with the pain and pushing for that long. And it probably would have, I mean, everyone, the doctors, all the nurses said, if you weren't in as good a shape as you are now, this would have been a C-section. So I am very happy at the decision I made. I knew it wasn't worth, you know, trying to prove to myself that I could, you know, do it all natural, because I knew being in a hospital setting and having their guidelines and the risk of getting an infection and having her have to go to the NICU was not worth that. So I was happy that I went into it with an open mind, no birth plan, even though I'm a super planner, as you guys can probably figure out. So then she was there, and everything was fine, and I was so excited, and I was just so happy and relieved to have her out. I did not even cry, which I thought was funny. Ryan was crying, but I wasn't crying. I was just so happy, and everyone thought it was funny, because I said, one of my first words when I saw her was, I don't have to give away all my little girl hats. So that was funny. But yeah, she's a perfect little girl. She didn't do me too much damage. I did have a 2nd-degree tear, but that's all internal, and so it wasn't too bad. And I'm doing really well now as far as healing up. I feel almost back to normal. And she was 7 pounds 9 ounces, which was bigger than I thought she was going to be, and 19¼ inches long, which is kind of shorter than I thought she'd be. But she's perfect. She's a very sweet little thing. She's a very good baby. Very good baby. It's only fussy when she eats and gets her diaper changed or clothes changed. That's the only time where she's really grumpy. But other than that, she's been perfect.